What's up, everybody? Couch Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down an Overwatch tier list so that you know exactly what characters that you should be picking to dominate Season 35 and which ones you should probably avoid. We're going to be breaking it all down, but the only way to truly improve is by seeing in-depth VOD reviews and guides made by Grandmaster or top 500 level players, which we have tons of on the GameLeap website, where we can show you in-depth strategy that no one else is going to be utilizing in your rank, allowing you to easily climb, and you're going to be able to systematically remove every single mistake, making you better and better on any freaking hero. So if you want to improve incredibly quickly, you got to go get a GameLeap sub right now down below. Now, we're going to break down the overarching meta, and we're also going to break down the best characters that you could be climbing with in Season 35. But in order to do that, we have to talk about what a meta even is. You see, meta typically stands for most effective tactics available. At least that's the general term. However, when you apply it to gaming, it's just about what characters are the most played, what characters are the most effective, and what characters are you most likely to run into, either against or with on your team. And it's very important to know for two main reasons. One, you know what characters are good that you should maybe be playing because they're the most powerful characters in any given time frame, especially when you compare it to its pick rate and win rate. And two, you know what characters you're gonna go up against, because some characters have really good and bad matchups, especially in Overwatch. And if a character is really, really strong and played a lot in the meta, and the character that you like to play is really bad against it, you might have to go up against that character every single game, and that's gonna make it really hard on your win rate. Now, this runs us into a problem where we can't actually use just the data from Grandmaster or High Masters, because the pro meta and the ranked meta and the vast majority of the different ranks all have different metas. So just because something is really, really dominant in Grandmaster doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be dominant for every rank. So we're gonna jump in and talk about the best characters that you could pick and their win rates respectively to their rank, so that you know what characters you should play at what rank, and we're gonna give you some more tips and tricks along the way. Now, the first thing that we're gonna kick this off with is, of course, we're gonna talk about the tanks. Now, if we looked at only the highest ranks, we would see that Roadhog and Wrecking Ball are completely dominant. They are the most picked tanks in the entire game, and even though other tanks see some amounts of play here or there in the highest rank, like Zarya and Rein, here or there, Sigma sees some play, and even D.Va sees quite a bit of play, overall, these characters actually take a backseat to Roadhog and Wrecking Ball. However, when we talk about Diamond and below, the S tier tanks would actually be quite different, where Rein is the #1 tank at nearly every single rank in Diamond and below. And while Roadhog still sees some play when we're talking about Diamond and even Plat, Zarya is creeping upward, and in most ranks, Zarya and Rein are the top 2 most played tanks. Now you might be thinking, oh, okay, so all these Diamond, Plat, Gold players, they're just jamming Rein, so let's just copy what the Grandmasters do and play Roadhog and play Wrecking Ball instead, and we'll just win the game, right? No, that's not how it works, unfortunately. There are a lot of factors that can enable a Grandmaster to be able to play not a Rein. So there's teammates playing around you, there's DPS being more self-sufficient, and honestly, there's just a bunch of factors to where it's not as easy to just say, oh, you know, Grandmasters play Wrecking Ball, so I'm just gonna play Wrecking Ball into Rein every single time and climb all the way to Grandmaster. Unfortunately, not the case. So for the most part, Reinhardt is going to be the #1 S tier tank, and the best way to climb, if you wanna climb all the way to High Diamond or Masters, is probably going to be the Rein diff. This means learning how to win Shatter Wars, making sure to not make simple mistakes when you're talking about fire striking when the enemy Rein has ultimate, tracking the enemy Rein's ultimate, making sure that you are using natural cover to effectively jiggle around and shoot those fire strikes to get big ones so that you get the maximum amount of ult charge very quickly, making sure to get in enough swings in and not being scared to swing as you push forward as long as it's not getting you killed, effectively jiggling around natural cover, and making sure that when you're on that front line after you've taken space for your team, you have a healthy shield that can shield your team from damage as your team deals damage back to the enemy. These are all little bits and pieces that you could use on Rein to completely tank diff and just carry with Rein. But let's talk about other tanks that you could play. Of course, Zarya is fantastic, especially if you're enabling characters like Reinhardt, You can really bail a lot of characters out of sticky situations, whether that's Winston, whether that's Roadhog. Of course, you can enable Wrecking Ball. And Zarya is one of those characters that if you're a lot better than your opposition, she's a very, very good Smurf tank that can really carry entire team fights by herself, capable of getting multiple kills on high charge. She's a really great character, and for those reasons, for the majority of ranks, I'm gonna say that she's S tier for climbing. However, the higher you get, she does drop down a fair amount, so definitely keep that in mind. Now, of course, Roadhog and Wrecking Ball should hypothetically be S tier characters. I'm dropping them down to the A tier, unfortunately. While they are definitely very, very strong, and Roadhog is probably one of the best characters to solo carry, he's also a character that is pretty easy to counter with one of the most picked characters right now in Ana. And it's really important that while a really great Roadhog can definitely carry games, he's also one of the hardest tanks to play with. And that's why when you see Roadhog and Wrecking Ball together in some of the Grandmaster ranks, the Roadhog is played almost like a third DPS as someone self-sufficient. And the fact that Wrecking Ball and Roadhog can kind of do their own thing and they don't really have to work together at all works because Roadhog doesn't really work well with anyone. That's why he's a really fantastic solo tank, but he's really not a great duo tank. And if you have a really efficient Ryan and Zaro combo on the enemy team, as Roadhog, you're gonna feel pretty freaking useless. I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be pretty bad. But if you're in a situation where you have another tank that is doing their own thing, or it's just really bad, and you know, there's divers, no one's dying, your DPS are just completely lost, and you feel like if you're just standing there as Ryan, or you have been for multiple fights and nothing is happening, Roadhog can be that saving grace that can give you a shot at winning and bail you out. But keep in mind, at the majority of ranks that people play Roadhog at, he has a sub 50% win rate. So you might think that you're that guy on Roadhog, but maybe it's better to just, you know, not be that guy and play a duo tank and, you know, try to work together with the team instead of just going off on your own every single time. Now, D.Va, Sigma, and Winston all vary between the C and the B tier dependent on the rank that you're playing them in. And of course, all of them can work if you have the pieces to get them to work. First off, probably the strongest one is Sigma. He sees a ton of playing Grandmaster with a huge win rate, and even in ranks where he's not played a ton, he still has a pretty good win rate. And there's a lot of things to love about Sigma. He's pretty self-sufficient. He has a very powerful ultimate, and all in all, he also is a shield tank. So if you're not really a Rhine guy, you could play Sigma and carry in the off-tanking role. However, there is some downsides to Sigma, of course. He has a lot of vulnerability to characters like Roadhog because he could just get hooked through his kinetic grasp. He, of course, has a ton of weaknesses to characters like Zarya who could just shred him. He can't really consistently frontline in the same way that Ryan can. He doesn't have as much frontlining power, and he's a character that can do a lot of things, but he also needs a certain amount of resources from his team. You can slowly but surely use up all your resources on the front line, your shield breaks, you use up all your utility, and if you get swarmed, dove up on, you have a Tracer on your back, you have a Genji jumping on you, it can feel pretty exhausting if you don't have at least one person on your team that is legitimately, you know, working with you, peeling for you, and helping you. I do love playing a character like Sigma when you have a DPS duo that is playing someone like Cassidy that gives you some defensive capabilities and y'all can play together even on an off angle or something like that. But the true thing that's gonna change Sigma in his tier is just gonna be your own personal skill. Very high skill ceiling character, very hard to play. So it's really gonna depend on just how good you are on the character, and that can really fluctuate him big time. Not really a tank you want to flex to all the time if you're not really that comfortable on him. Of course, D.Va and Winston can be good, especially if the maps have a lot of verticality. D.Va can play a very peel-heavy role, trying to peel for DPS and shut down enemy DPS. That's always a fantastic use of her, especially when we're talking about hit scan DPS. She's one of the best solutions to a really dominant hit scan DPS, capable of constantly contesting high ground, and there's a number of different maps where she's really powerful. And Winston, of course, is going to be a character that is going to be great, especially if it's a high ground map, but sometimes it needs a little bit more than that, where you really want some damage sources that can come with you, right? You don't really want to play like a Winston with a Cassidy and, you know, a Hanzo, right? You really want to play Winston if you have a good Tracer, a good Genji, plus maybe another dive tank, someone that can go with you and follow up on some of the damage you're creating. Sure, a really good Winston can make it work alone and, you know, really surgically try to find those jumps and build up that ultimate. It's just really hard. It's just really freaking hard. Winston's gonna be C tier most of the time, but in the right team composition, he could be just the perfect pick for you. Now, Orisa, we're not gonna talk about Orisa. Player unwell. I don't know what to tell you. Just kidding. Now, next up, we gotta talk about the DPS characters. So DPS characters are going to be really varied across the ranks, of course. Every single DPS character has very, very different matchups depending on what tanks are played, what supports are played, and how proficient you are in the character. A really apparent one that always happens is Genji. A lot of times when you're talking about diamond, plat, gold, silver, and especially bronze, Genji is just one of the most picked DPS and completely dominant, but Genji super hard scales off in Masters and Grandmaster, and he has a ton of counters when players are playing together, when they properly peel, when they properly heal. Genji gets a lot less value. So still, Genji would technically be meta for the majority of ranks. So it's important to know how to counter Genji, and he actually is a viable option, especially when a lot of supports are just playing whatever freaking supports they want to play, and Genji is good against a lot of supports, especially not Brig. Now, if we're talking about pound for pound, the best DPS when we are considering Grandmaster, it's undoubtedly Tracer as the best DPS for sure. But you got to keep in mind that there's a lot of self-sufficiency going on with Roadhog and Wrecking Ball being the top played tanks, of course. And the fact that Tracer scales really heavily with skill means that she's not going to be as viable as mechanical skill goes down and the team composition doesn't work as well together and your supports aren't as self-sufficient, because Tracer's typically not gonna be a peeler. So all in all, Tracer's still a fantastic pick and I would still put her in the S tier, but there are a lot of other viable options in the vast majority of ranks. Namely, Cassidy sees the most play in Diamond as an S tier DPS, sees the second most play in Platinum, only second to Soldier 76, which is also a fantastic character to play. Soldier 76 is really self-sufficient, has his own heal, a lot of mobility, so all those really play very well into the character. We already mentioned Genji, that would probably be something closer to A tier, and then Hanzo, who's also in the A tier, who's very powerful, does have a couple of key weaknesses, especially getting dove and swarmed up on. It's gonna be pretty mechanically demanding of you when you have a lot of divers just kind of jumping right on top of you, and you typically need some sort of peel from a support. But Hanzo really thrives at getting a lot of value, especially in ranked from long range. You can spam and play in a lot of compositions, and I think he's great to play in a Rein Zarya composition. You get to spam the enemy Rein shields, give your run an advantage in the Shadow War, and of course, grab the Zarya ultimate. Just works really well together. And yeah, Hanzo's fantastic. He is definitely hard to master though. There's a huge skill ceiling on hitting those damn shots on divers. Speaking of skill ceiling, it's incredibly difficult to reach that skill ceiling and become a god at Overwatch. However, the GameLeap website can activate your true potential with high quality mechanical courses breaking down exactly how to aim with every single character. Tips, tricks, mistake guides, and breakdown VOD reviews. We even go into pro matches and show you exactly how to abuse what they do to dominate the opposition. So if you want to climb incredibly quickly and become a Overwatch god, do yourself a favor and go check it out right now, down below. Other A tier DPS would have to be Ashe, Echo, and Widowmaker. These characters are all very reliable and consistent depending on your own personal skill. Widowmaker has some of the highest win rate when in the hands of a Grandmaster player, but Widowmaker is also going to be directly dependent on your skill. If you're a god tier Widowmaker, realistically, you can one-trick the damn character all the way to Grandmaster, but if you're not, then you're not. I mean, that's all there is to say about the character. Meta or no meta, playing Widowmaker is all about having a certain amount of mechanical skill, positioning well up against your divers, and knowing how to play against those hard matchups. The divers that are jumping on you, the Genjis, the Tracers, the Widowmakers that you are gonna have to duel over and over again as you climb the ranks. There's a lot to go in there as litmus tests in order to climb. Ashe is very reliable, consistent damage. I think that in a lot of cases, she's just better on paper than Cassidy. Cassidy has a very low win rate in the majority of ranks, while Ashe has a very high win rate, but Cassidy sees a lot more play. I think that's just because of people's personal preference. The numbers don't really support Cassidy seeing more play in the vast majority of ranks underneath the Masters rank, but you know, it's what people play, so that's what the meta is. And then Echo is really, really good. She can be pretty hard to play, especially when there's a lot of hit scans running around. But if you play her very safe, she has an amazing ultimate and you can get a lot of poke value. And I think she works really well in some dive compositions, playing with a Wrecking Ball or playing with a Winston Diva. There's a lot of options there. And then a whole bunch of different DPS are going to be in the B rank that are gonna just vary dependent on skill or the map. Characters like Doomfist can be amazing in the right hands and can be pretty mediocre in the hands of others. Characters like Sim and Torb can have their places with value. In fact, they have some of the highest win rate in the very little pick rate that they are picked. That means that when people do whip them out, they're getting a lot of value with them and they're doing well, but you can't whip them out in every single situation. And most notably, a lot of high ground maps don't really favor these characters all that much. Pharah has her place and can be really dominant, especially if you have a Mercy duo partner. It can make the character amazing. Reaper is definitely underplayed, very, very strong, especially as you go lower and lower in rank. A Reaper that is, quick on his feet, has good reaction time. He's going to be able to get a lot of value and rate the way. May's phenomenal when you have a choke point. Bastion is good when your opponents are bad. Sombra is a character that is probably not playable that much. She has like no pick rate, even all the way up in Grandmaster, and still has a bad win rate everywhere. Like Fitzy here could play her, but she's really just really underpowered and hard to play. Needs a lot of coordination, and you don't really find that in ranked all that often. Now, last but certainly not least, we got to talk about the supports. And I will tell you that supports is the one role where the most picked support is the same across every single rank, and that is Ana. Ana is the most played support, and it's not particularly close. That being said, her win rate astronomically changes from every single rank. Basically, at Bronze, she has a 47% win rate, even though she's the most picked, and that goes up by an average of 2% every single rank increase, all the way to Grandmaster, where she has close to a 56% win rate. This means that everyone's playing Ana everywhere, but not everyone is playing Ana well enough to climb. This means that while Ana is always meta, and doesn't matter what rank you're in, you're probably gonna play with or against an Ana, she is going to be very different depending on the caliber of Ana you go up against. Now, this could directly change how you're playing certain characters. For instance, you're playing Roadhog and you're a little bit out of position. Getting nade and slept is a really quick way to die, but if an Ana isn't reliably able to hit you with the nade, isn't reliably able to sleep you, or isn't even aware of you constantly flanking and killing her entire team, then it's like you're playing a completely different game. Regardless, Ana is definitely the S tier character in support, and probably the S tier character in the game, because she is going to be the most played in every meta, regardless of rank. But the next most picked support will actually surprise you, and it's Mercy, at least outside of every rank besides Grandmaster. We'll get to that in a second, but for the majority of ranks, Mercy is the second most picked. But she has a pretty static win rate, a positive win rate across the board, and Mercy is going to be one of those characters that is going to really enable certain characters on your team better, right? Mercy has that mobility, and she has the capability to pocket or really focus on certain people on your team, so you can be selective in the people you give extra resources to. You don't have to just be that, hand it all out and focus on everyone equally type of support. You can really focus on the players that you notice are more extraordinary on your team and amplify their efforts. And Mercy is a character that does have a lot of capability to really shift team fights in that way. But the thing about Mercy is that you are often going to be a target, and it's going to really depend on how your opponents are trying to deal with you. There's a lot of DPS that are going to come after you. There's a lot of tanks that might even come after you, and learning how to properly navigate around them, having the game sense and awareness to know where they're going, where they're coming from, and making sure that no DPS ever sneaks up on you is going to be a big part of Mercy. But all in all, she's a pretty good pick in general in the meta, and she's going to be in that high tier as well. However, let's talk about Grandmaster really quick, where Zenyatta is actually the most picked character, which is really funny because you would think, how are people playing Zenyatta when the DPS are better than ever? But Zenyatas are also completely cracked if you have the skill set required to play Zenyatta. you can just completely dunk on players all over the freaking place, especially when we talk about some of the buffs he received not too long ago. Zenyatta's amazing, and he really works well with Wrecking Ball, but he's not gonna always work well in every single composition. And while, yes, he's really potentially strong, you gotta also realize that you're probably not gonna get a lot of peel in any of the lower ranks, so that will definitely affect his status as probably down towards, you know, A tier or maybe even the top of B tier, depending on the rank you're in. Speaking of other really great supports, Lucio is a fantastic support at basically every single rank. He doesn't see a ton of play at every single rank, but he sees a consistent amount of play, and he has a good win rate. Lucio is a very phenomenal character, and especially in ranked, you have a lot of flexibility with how you play this character, meaning that you can play him differently depending on who you're up against, your team composition. Maybe you're gonna play him in a dive, and you're gonna go in quite aggressively and try to outplay some people, add to the damage output of your team. Maybe you're playing him in a more traditional composition with the Ryan Zarya, a brawl comp, and you're speed boosting and speed retreating your team in and out of combat, and you're just making it so this blob of meat is moving around faster. There's a lot of different ways you can play the character, and of course, you could just get really good mechanically with the character, just dominate people and just destroy DPS over and over again. But this leads us into the last two supports we gotta talk about, which is Brig and Baptiste. Both supports that are good in their respective situations. Brig is a great counter-picking character towards divers. Really, really great at shutting down a ton of them. And if you ever feel like you're in a situation as a support where you feel helpless, you feel like you're getting bullied, Brig is that saving grace in your back pocket that's like, you know what, I'm just gonna make it so no one has fun. If I don't get to have fucking fun, you don't get to have fun. No one gets to have fun. And I'm gonna play Brig. So that's definitely something you can do. I would kind of refrain from doing it too often, because while you will win, you're not improving at some of the other characters that maybe you have more fun with, maybe you prefer more. You want to try to sometimes work your way through some of those harder situations to improve, but Brig is still that character when your team just doesn't cooperate and things aren't going well. And then Baptiste is a character that's going to work really well, especially when you have some shields to work around. You have a Rhine is great. He actually works pretty well in double shield if it's a Rhine Sigma. And Baptiste has an individual high ceiling. In Grandmaster, he has a really high win rate. In most ranks, he has about an even win rate or a negative one. This really showcases the power of Baptiste using his weapon mechanically well, timing your immortality field properly, and using his mobility to get out of tricky situations. There's a lot you have to do and track with Baptiste to play him really, really well. But all in all, he's still a viable option. He's gonna be like in the B tier. None of the supports are bad, honestly. All of them are playable. All of them are pretty good in certain situations. Besides Mora, who is pretty bad. I would say Mora is not great. She sees more play in the lower ranks, but you would imagine that she would have a high win rate in the lower ranks, but that's not true. She's played a lot in gold, in silver. She's played a ton, but she doesn't have over a 50% win rate. So everyone's playing her, but no one's winning with her, which is kind of just sad. Just fucking sad. Not only that, but she just doesn't scale very well as you climb the ranks. So you are going to play a character that doesn't have a great win rate, and you're gonna maybe climb if you're better than everyone else in her, but then as you climb, it's gonna become harder and harder to climb with her because she's less and less good. So if I would say that any support is not optimal right now, I would say it's her. You could still make her work, you could still win some games with her, but all in all, there's so many other options that I would probably suggest you choose one of those. And the DPS role is very open, the tank role is fairly open as well, and yeah, the game's actually not in a bad place meta-wise right now, as we're in this interim between Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2. But definitely let me know who's your favorite and least favorite character right now. What rank are you in? What are you struggling with? Let me know down below. And go to the GameLeap website for tips, tricks, guides, and everything you need to dominate on any of these characters. We have Grandmaster, top 500 guides over all of them. So if you really want to master them and get really good, go check it out right now down below.